to that episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey. You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to talk about finding the rhythm. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
So this episode is going to cut in kind of a funny spot because we were just sitting down talking about what we were going to talk about, and it led into a larger discussion. So we're just going to jump right in here as we're talking about trying to find the rhythm of storytelling and whether planning or improving and what actually those two things actually mean and how they kind of collide together in just understanding the rhythm story. So without any further ado, here's us. Question. I guess. Right on. I was thinking about how somebody talk about planning games and the work and the prep work that they put in. And I was thinking about how, because they were kind of dogging is the wrong word, but they're kind of talking about how improvisational GMs, usually it's more of an experience thing. So you played a lot of games, you've read a lot, you understand story, do like all that kind of stuff. So you, so anyway, and it made me think about things and how it's sort of like, I don't know, I was just thinking about different games, and like in Apocalypse World, they call you an MC, like Master of Ceremony, and then Spirit of 77, they call you a DJ. And I was kind of thinking about how like a DJ thing, it's like, like there's like a rhythm to the way a night or a club goes, right? And so, it's really more about feeling the vibe and the rhythm of what's happening. Do you know what I mean? And playing along inside of that. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of like comparing the two. I don't even know if there's anything to talk about with it, but it was kind of a thing where it's like, I almost feel like it's not improvisation. It's like, I feel like sometimes when you say improvisation, it means like when you see an improv troupe on a stage. Do you know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is it's more like a jam band where it's like, this is the key we're playing in, right? And this is like whatever we're playing in the BB King's box. There's these notes will always fit in, like this is the scale and the key that we're playing in. Any note you play will fit in there. So you just, play music. But we all know like when
I see it and not like you could say the same thing about a story. Like I understand how this type of music works, all the beats of the story.
Well, that's okay.
And
so,
you still end up with the same thing.
But that's what I'm kind of saying is that I feel like when there's this kind of push and pull between like planning game masters and like improv game masters, right? But I think it's sort of like, and I don't know if this is just me, and the only reason I compare it to music is because it feels that same way, because it's like you're trying to like hit the groove and stay in the groove, right? And the groove is the moment at the table when everybody is emotionally connected and invested in the story, right? And so we're all, kind of like in this mass hypnosis telling a story, right? And I guess what I'm saying is like the key in music is sort of like the genre in stories. So these are the notes we can play. We've all agreed this is the scale we're playing on, right? In the same way, we've all agreed this is the genre we're playing on, and these are all the things that happen inside that genre. And then you just sort of follow where the rhythm of the story goes. And I don't feel like, in a way, it's like improving, but at the same time, I feel like it's kind of not sometimes because I don't feel like it would.
It's improving. I feel like really good at it make it look like maybe it's improving, and there's probably some spontaneity, but I feel like it's more like when you listen to comedians talk about how they set up a show. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
that's yes.
It's more like it's more rehearsed than that. And it's like, there are things I've worked on, and maybe it's not, you're not exact thing over and over unless you're like running a con game. But,
right.
You're thinking about things and writing them out first and refining things. And if you have an idea that doesn't work, you're reworking ideas, and maybe it all looks seamless, but you spend a lot of time thinking about it rolling it over in your mind, and a lot of time listening to jokes and writing jokes.
So that's what I'm saying is it's the same way in that you've listened to and watched so many stories and you've watched movies and you've watched cartoons and you've read books and you've read comic books and graphic novel, and then you listen to an audio drama and all these stories, right? Whether they were old stories or new stories, or stories that were right in the genre you're playing in, or stories that are kind of like just a little bit off one way or the other, and then if you pay attention to story, which is where I'm kind of coming down with this, is that it's sort of like the next level of storytelling is it's that you've internalized all these pieces so well that you can just sort of bust them out. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like if you go watch, God, I'm not going to say the name of the band because I don't like them, but like Government Mule, right? They're one of the best jam bands of all time. Okay, I love Government Mule. That's not the band I was thinking of, but like you listen to a live performance of them and they just go on a riff for 20 minutes or whatever of just jamming out, and playing, and everybody has their turn going around the circle. And it's real common in any kind of a jam band situation, whether it's like bluegrass or jazz or blues or whatever, right? And everybody has their turn going around, the circle. And I feel like it's kind of the same way in tabletop games, but it's like as a game master, you're sort of like the conductor or the DJ or the MC of the whole thing. And it's sort of like, I feel like if you have internalized all those moments in story and the genre, that you're not like you're improvising, you're like putting pieces together. You're not really improvising. And I'm not saying that as like a bad thing of it. I just think it's like maybe a way to contextualize it for people to not feel like you have so much pressure on you to like, I have nothing planned. What do I do? Well, you have all these moments of story that so just pick and pull the ones that players want to pick and pull from. Do you know what I'm saying? Does it make sense at all?
I think that like those fun, I don't think those are best game. And I don't think that, because like improv and like that jam band thing, people feeding off of each other too.
Okay, so
and I don't think those are the best games either.
So let's break something down then, okay? So I'll sort of share some of the secret sauce or whatever, right? Think of a game that I ran, right? That you really had a good time in or enjoyed. And then I thought we might go through and break out like what moments came through like that I had kind of planned, and one to see if you think that holds up. Does that make sense? Okay, so what game are you thinking of?
Dust.
Oh, which one? With Lee and Carrie?
Like
oh man, that may be too far back for me to remember what I improvised when I didn't. That game was a long time ago.
Yeah.
No, I'm not disagreeing or saying that you shouldn't have. I'm just saying that it's been that one may be too far back for me to actually honestly remember. This was an improv moment. This was not.
The Spore Feast.
The Pharaohmancer. Okay. Okay. Right on. This one may be kind of hard, but I can do it because there's some things where I'm not sure where it's going to come down on, but we can do it. So, okay. So quick context for the game, I guess. Are you talking about the part where before you went to get the Pharaohmancer, or from the beginning when you went to go find rescue the judge's daughter? Okay. So group of characters into Genesis, right? And they are hired to buy one of the High Justice of Justinian to go get his daughter. She's kind of gone off track and she joins some apocalyptics, and she's in this, I can't remember the name of the city that she's in, but she's, sort of like the city a ways away. It takes a little bit of travel there. Have to go rescue her, right? So the characters go to that city to rescue her, and then drama ensues, and then you get set on the trail of a Pharaohmancer to go rescue her, basically, right? Okay. So I guess, what are the highlights of that game? Is that how we should do that you can remember, and whether they were planned scene or scenes that I had kind of tried to knowing that you're going towards, or how should we break this down?
It's kind of hard because I feel like there were others that stood out for other characters, but I was playing the character that was about battle and war.
Orgiastic of the Anabaptist.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah.
So they're kind of about.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Really more about the killing, cleansing through killing, because battalions are really more about cleansing. Yeah.
It's a more sterile kind of cleansing.
Right. Okay. So I have two games in mind. So we'll do this game, and then I have another game in mind to mention, and then we'll break them down. So yes. Well, I don't know if you see game mastering this way. That's why I wasn't sure if it would be relevant for me to ask you this kind of a question, because first, the other part is that, I think I can totally paint you in a corner on this one. Maybe I should do. So, there's a game. Okay, so we'll do this one first, and then we'll move back and forth. Okay. So what are the moments? I don't even know. We don't even know if this is going to work or not. But let's see if it does. So
I could probably just tell you what I remember, because it's been long enough ago that clearly the highlights, if I still recall them. So there's like kind of desert wasteland in between main city and the apocalyptic outpost.
Yeah, it was a town. But yeah,
whatever you call it. So there's a raid that happens there. The cults and
clans. I think they were clanners.
Yeah, there's that happened.
So you guys are on the road there, and you got raided. You got attacked before you got there.
Right.
So So this was.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that was something that you had planned for us to happen.
So I'm going to pull a mulligan on this one and say yes and no. Okay.
Okay.
Because so just like last night we played Mutant Crawl Classic, and so generally speaking, whenever I have people that are making a navigation across some area, right, I have them make some kind of navigation roll or whatever it is, pathfinding or whatever the chosen skill is, right? If you succeed at that roll, generally I just say, cool, you find the way, you get a good path, whatever, you navigate the least dangerous way, and you get there without event. If you fail that roll, or you sort of succeed with a consequence or something along those lines, if it's not an outright success, then I have some kind of event happen, right? So just like in that Genesis game, and just like in the Mutant Call Classics game last night, bad thing happened, cool, drop it in these clanners, and they're going to cause some mayhem. So
did you plan that if we success that it would be a clanner event? Because that's planning to me. If you were like, I literally have no idea what's going to happen if you fail this roll, I made it up right now. That's not planning.
So, I don't know how to, in this specific case, it's sort of like a go-to for me, right? Because in this genre, right, you are in this wasteland of an area. It's post-apocalypse, all this disaster, mutants, all this nastiness that's out there. Like, complication for me is going to be someone else is being attacked and you can make a decision for whether you want to help them or kill them all, or you're just going to be attacked, right? And I'll be honest, flipping through the book, some of the clanner pictures are wicked cool and inspirational and very evocative. And I was like, oh, this is a cool picture. If it comes up, I'll just bust it out and be like, look at this. This is what's attacking you, right? So I guess it's a little bit improv and a little bit not. Like in that it's just an easy go-to. It's the garlic. Yep, ambush. Mm-hmm. You're right. You know what I'm saying? So, and then the moments in that battle and the scenes and the intensity and the things that I narrate, those are all improvised.
Right.
So, but that just comes from trying to be descriptive and to be honest, I don't know that I've ever been really good at narrating fight scenes or describing them, but after reading several of the Horus Heresy series or the books that are written by Dan Abnett, I think his name is. He's a 40K writer. There are very few writers that I've read that really make war seem like disaster and true chaos. The Gaunt's Ghost series is really good, but reading those, it's pretty chaotic and insane and hard to track and whatever. So he helped me along a lot. But I think that one is kind of yes and kind of no. It's just an easy go-to for me. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, what's the move you do? Well, that's the move I do, because that's the easy one to go to. And it was, if it was a good battle, it was cool, mm-hmm. And the I suppose I stole a lot from the book because the artwork in that book is so good, and the way like they have the blood and the glowiness and all that kind of insanity. And I just had this, I guess, as I was flipping through the book and I saw some of these pictures and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy cool. Like he's glowing in the dark. How terrifying is that in a battle? Do you know what I mean? Like in the middle of the night and whatever. Like that's scary. So I think some of those things are just me looking at pictures and being like, ooh, this could be cool. This could be cool. But I don't know that I plan anything out other than, ooh, this looks terrifying. Right. So it's, if that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of.
So, that one's kind of a mulligan. It's kind of a yes and a no. Like a die roll happened. Time to do something. That's what I did.
Okay.
So that one I'm going to say 50-50
on. Okay. So then you go the town on the edge of
Franca and Justinian.
It's like on the edge of settled what is left of civilization.
Right.
And then after this also like
disaster and spore fields.
Yeah. Shrug. Probably don't go there.
Right.
Wasteland. I don't know what I'm going to call it. So I don't remember a ton about, because that was more apocalyptic focused, because we had apocalyptic in the group, and so I know some setup scenes in a way like this are focused.
Right.
So this was kind of like that plus added tension. What are the
judge?
The judge. Yeah. So kind of some points tension for the judge.
Right.
And then,
and there's some battalion in there too, because they're trying to see if there was infection there because they were so close to the edge. So in those scenes there, that whole thing that happened in that pleasure den, basically, right? So they go into this apocalyptic, and for those of you that aren't familiar with the Genesis, the apocalyptic cult is basically the world is broken and a disaster. So we're just gonna we're gonna have as much fun as we can in the meantime and make money off of it and blackmail people if we can. That's sort of how they get by, and it's just devil may care libertine attitude. And so that one, the vast majority of those were 100% improvised, other than a couple names, because the way I envisioned that is the moment that game was when I started to shift my perspective of what I wanted to do with Genesis. I wanted to do both things. I wanted crazy, intense 40K D&D combat and crazy, intense vampire politics, and I wanted to smash them together, right? So when we're here, this is vampire mode. When we're here, this is D&D 40K mode, right? And so in those scenes there, I had a couple NPCs with names and like maybe a 1-sentence blurb. And it was like, let's make an evocative setting when you guys walk in there and just let it roll and see what happens. And there was some good scenes that happened in there, some loyalties challenge and that kind of stuff. But that was, I would say it was improvised, but really it just comes down to my experience from running World of Darkness games at the table and World of Darkness LARP and playing, and for LARP playing and running and just watching, because sometimes there's a scene happening and you're just watching the political movements happen and you always sort of absorb that in.
About that scene, did you about motivation, or did you literally like, well, here's one name and the rest no plan?
So I had, I believe, three NPCs that were part of this pleasure, this coven, this den or whatever. I had the person that you were going there, her name to go rescue, who was not actually there. And for the 3 people that were NPCs that were there, I had like a bullet point or 2, right, for who they were, and like just a broad personalities, right. And then I knew I didn't plan out like what they wanted. They wanted more power for their den, right. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that counts as planning because it's in the broad spectrum of apocalyptics, right. So I don't know that counts as any kind of big planning. It's just,
did you actually talk to find out?
No, I knew the information that they were going to need to get, and then it was there's a lot of players at that table. I believe there was like 6 or 7 maybe. So It was like, we have a good smattering of mental social characters. So these are the clues that have to get given out. Go find them.
But there were
yes, the girl wasn't going to be there. The warning about the Ferromancer, and then probably a deal to be made. So and I like that. I would say is largely improvised, because it was like some broad strokes of like, this is what has to happen in this scene. But it was like, if you guys don't want to engage with it that much, then don't. Get your information and move on, right? But it turned into a much larger thing because, like you said, we had an apocalyptic, we had the judge and that kind of stuff, and it developed into a bigger set of scenes that went on. And then the game kind of shifted gears after these couple of sessions happened, but there was much more potential and things set up for them to be able to go back to. It just didn't happen to work out that way.
So the next is search Borfields and encounter some ants.
Yes.
While we were sleeping, that may have entered somebody against will, possibly, or no.
Oh, I think it was crawling in someone's ear.
Or yeah, there was definitely some unwanted penetration happened with some crawly thing. And them acting unnaturally also as side note.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So that was, I would say, largely. See, this is where this is kind of weird, because this Ferromancer, I was obsessed with it for a little while. I just was, at the time, I think I was working on the truck, on the ambulance, so a lot of time on the road, a lot of downtime, and so I just had this Ferromancer thing rolling around in my head, and it was more about like, God, it's so creepy. What is creepy about that? And then it wandered into this thing of like, Ferromancer, he controls people like insects by pheromones. So, what's creepy about insects? Well, like how the ants walk and all that, making people into insects, basically, like mentally. And so I don't know. This is where it gets weird for me. So I don't know that I would say that I 100% improvised that, because I had spent just time thinking about weird, creepy shit, right? And like, what is creepy and scary? That stuff is. So those were the moments that I played out, and it was like, it was more about like waiting for the right moment to hit the symbol. You know what I'm saying? Like so
the insect encounter plan moment that it was going to happen.
Maybe.
Influx.
Well, like you guys were looking around at bugs. So I'm like, cool, they're looking for bugs. So you guys are interested in bugs. So I need to do something interesting with bugs because you're looking at them, right? And so those are the moments where it's like, I let you guide me for because the questions you ask are what you want to see, right? You don't ask questions about things you don't want to see. That's not the way, the game works, right? So when there was some time to describe the leaves, the geometric leaves that the plants grow because they're mutated, and some of I had to have a way to point you guys towards the Ferromancer, right? Which in general is, there's 2 ways. Either you follow a trail of bugs or mice or whatever to them, because that's one of the ways they talk about it in the lore of the world, or one of you is going to lose control of your faculties and lead you guys there, right? And I didn't want to full on have that, because I liked the idea of that being the trump card, that you get too far now and we're at that halfway where do we keep going or do we not keep going? And then it's time for you to lose some agency, like control yourself or whatever, right? So I guess in a way I had planned for you guys to follow that trail of ants, but I didn't necessarily have planned for them to be like crawling into your ears and stuff like that. That was just a cool moment of body horror because I'm a terrible person. So part of that again comes back. I don't even remember that I don't even know the name of the movie. I didn't see it. The trailers creeped me out so much when I was like 13 years old that I never went and saw the movie, but it was a horror movie about this person with bugs inside them. them, and like these two people live in a house together. It's like boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife, and she's freaking out because there's bugs in them and like badness. And the trailer stuck with me, which is part of the body horror thing for worms or whatever. Right? I guess it's really deep in there in the psyche somewhere. But like those moments like that are just things that it's back there. Okay, yep, got it. Bring it out here. Yep, because you're asking about these bugs and there's a trail of them. Well, it'll be creepy. Oh, it'd be creepy if they're crawling inside you. That's weird, right? Boom, there you go. Garlic salt, done. Right? So yeah.
So I guess a moment like actually going. I mean, it's kind of inherent in the process with the degeneration.
Yeah, and the when I describe those things, they're tried to be mostly they're improvised because I feel like if I'm planning the descriptions of things out, for me, I would tend to regurgitate the same things. And like each time you go through, I want it to be new. So I want to try and find a new way to describe that. Well, generally speaking, I'm not going to sit down and think that out. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I steal some language from the book, probably out even consciously or subconsciously, whatever. But yeah.
There's a warehouse situation, and I don't counter a lot in there, but I don't maybe would like some like fair lackey.
Yeah, but the group of you did a good job by stealth and planning to sort of avoid and limit your risks. So, and in those moments, I had kind of had an idea of what might happen, but at the same time, I don't spend too much time planning those moments because if you make good rolls, I don't want to steal that from you. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't want to spend a ton of time planning out some big ambush, and then if you have good rolls, then I just steal your rolls from you, right? And then I've wasted all that time. Or my choice is either I steal your roll or I waste that planning. So I choose neither. I have a couple broad strokes, ambush here. How hard is the ambush going to be? Okay, whatever. And then, I let it roll. Not really. Because at the same time, I was learning the degenesis system as well. So that's also part of the reason to go back to the clanners, why I use the clanners is because I was much more familiar with the abilities of people than I was the creatures and monsters. So that's why the reason why I chose them as opposed to like one of the creatures, because speed of encounter and me having to try and look something up right then,
So then inside the warehouse of like a tank, some liquid, and then like an island bug, the Ferromancer on it, and romance jelly. I don't know.
Yeah. So this is a terrible scene, and I had a great time doing this one. So it was a warehouse, like a steel building warehouse with the roof and certain parts of it broken in. And so the Ferromancer is standing in the middle of it. Well, the rain comes in, obviously, right? So there's this big puddle of water. And I like the idea of this nasty water. You know what I mean? Like I've done a fair amount of hiking and stuff. And when you're walking through creek beds and those areas where it's like kind of halfway stagnant and it's just terrible.
Well, you don't know how to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you can't. It's dirty. Like
right. And it's like, how crafty is this Ferromancer we've never dealt with before? And to be fair, you guys have never dealt with one of these creatures at all, right? So for people that don't know, degenesis, humans can get infected with these spores and they mutate. And one of the kinds of mutations is a Ferromancer. And they don't really have magic. They emit pheromones that can cause people or animals or insects to do things. And that's sort of the basis of it, right? But if you look at the picture of him in the book, he is terrifying. Like he is like sort of hunched over and like mostly naked and sinewy and like lumpy and warty and weird.
Yeah.
And he has like this beehive thing that's like built up onto his shoulder over his head and it comes around into his mouth. And so and then he has these big blisters on his back that seem to be like oozing and seeping, and he's just a wicked bad creature, right? So for that scene, I had this vision of I wanted to paint a really cool picture for you guys when you first encountered him, like that moment in the horror movie, right? I almost wanted it to be the first scene in the horror movie where you see like when you see Pinhead and you're like, whoa, the chains and the hooks and the sound, and it's black and white, like it's everything that's there is there for a reason. It's super thematic, right? And that's what I wanted that scene to be. So the initial what you saw, I had thought about in those weird moments when I was thinking about what's so weird about a Ferromancer and creepy, and like how they have these pustules that emit the pheromones and the jelly that comes out of them, and these people that were sort of entranced by his pheromones that would like sacrifice themselves and cover him, if you shot at him or whatever, right? And I like the idea of, it's just like anything that I try to run, try to have hard choices. So there's a person you have to rescue. The Ferromancer has her because she's enticed by him or whatever, entranced by him, and so you can't just blow him away because with all your guns and power because, well, she's right there. What if it goes wrong, right? So I had planned a hard choice and the setting of this scene, and then everything else was sort of just reaction to disaster. So the initial setup of it was planned, but then after that it was not. But that was just, when I say planned, I say it was just drawing on old horror tropes that I thought about, like what's a really cool scene to set up for this, you know, because the other part of it was, it's the first time I ran to Genesis, and I really wanted to be like, bam, check out this game, I love it, it's wicked cool, it's like nothing you've seen before. I wanted to make an impression. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I mean, I put some thought into it, not like in a plot way, but in a like a descriptive, like this is like soak in this world kind of a way, if that makes sense. So yeah. And then I don't remember, I remember specific moments of with the pheromones and stuff, but what I tried to do is there's a lot of moments in there that were, I would say, were improvised or whatever, because I would describe something and I would watch your faces, and then when someone would make a reaction or like they might shift in their seat a little bit, like, oh God, you know, it was like, okay, that's, noted, got that. Whether I push a little harder on that and maybe just slow down and talk a little lower and describe that a little more, or I just make a note and then I'm going to circle back to that again next round or whatever. And so I guess in my mind, it's like setting up a good scene and then playing off the players and seeing what they react to, both positively and negatively, to sort of like draw them in. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So I don't know if that makes any sense or has anything to do with what we talked about at all, but like, you think so? Okay. So
I mean, those moments are mostly planned. I mean, you can't really plan for exactly what's going to happen during the scene. That's out of your hands.
Right. No, I agree with that very much. Yeah.
So far as it can.
Well, and I think this harkens back to something we've said like episode 2 or some crap. Like, I run a game with an end in mind, right? So whatever the story is, like, that's my climax. This thing with the pheromans.
Maybe 50.
So like that part.
You didn't plan the actual like combat encounter.
No.
As far as how many thought of kind of.
So maybe I just thought of this now, and maybe this will shed some different light on it. I suppose I don't know that I in that game, I don't even know that I planned scenes. I planned like setting, and like I planned the scenery more. Like if you think about the Pheromancer, he's this really cool thing, right? But really what puts him in context is all this stuff around him and the bugs crawling around, and they're crawling in your ears, and you're making saves to see if you maintain control of yourself.
It's part of that scene.
Right, but what I'm saying is that I feel like it might be time better spent if you spend your effort to plan not a scene, but like the setting that it's going to take place in. Because, hang on. So I think that because then when the characters arrive, so I know there's a Pheromancer, I know the person that your target is there, and there's some other people that don't really, their names don't matter, right? And then there's all this other stuff there to give context to those couple people, right? And so I feel like it's like the harmony to the main part of what's happening, right? So like when sometimes you don't realize how much of the background you actually need to hear to be able to see what's happening in the foreground. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it gives context to everything, and it makes, when it does its best, it's almost like it fades away, but it gives context to everything. Does it make sense? I don't know if I'm getting too cerebral about it or not, but like
to me, that's just semantic. Say setting, you're setting the scene.
Well, okay, so let me clarify that then. So when I talk about like for scenes, like I'm thinking in like the vampire world, right? When I say there's a scene, in my mind, this is like people's political agendas and what they're trying to accomplish out of it, right? So that may be
because you're in a physical location, so
right. But what I'm saying though is it's like even when I play my tabletop games, like I used to draw like scene maps. It was like from here would lead to this thing, and then the 2 choices here, and then like spider web out. But it was always centered around what the outcome of your goal was by going there or doing that thing, right?
Well, in again your adventure,
maybe that's true too.
The two go hand in hand because the next scene is the next place that you go to. Like
right, that's fair enough. And I guess
if it was a different kind of game,
right. And I spent a lot of time like setting that scene up. Whereas if it was like, oh wow, maybe I'm out of the habit of doing that for Vampire, because like I realized as I talk about this, the den that they went to, the apocalyptic den, I spent a lot of time kind of like setting up like the feel and vibe of that place with the chain link fences for walls, but you can see through everything that's happening and all that kind of stuff, and the multiple levels of it and whatever. So maybe I have to think about that, because I wonder if it's one that I'm doing that more descriptive in the Genesis game because it's harder to connect to that world and see it in your mind's eye because it's so different from our own. Whereas when I say you roll up to this really nice mansion, on the north end of town or whatever, everybody can see that in their mind. They already know what that is. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe I just don't do the mental effort of trying to really lay out what that looks like in that sense versus in the Genesis sense because it's easier to connect to. I don't know. Something to think about. I don't know. So I don't know. I think it's one of these weird things where and also sometimes I feel like what you think you're planning and doing are not actually, you might be thinking and planning a little more. Because sometimes, like, at least for me, it's true. Stuff rolls around in the back of my head a lot. And then I don't even realize I'm doing it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that's just how it goes, especially for games I'm excited about. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So right on. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I disagree with you. I think that partly yes, but partly no. I think if we were to break down more of that game, there would be more of the scenes that would come forward as improvised, but the climax, I definitely concede that the setting and all of that was laid out, and I was, I wanted this big moment.
Saying those improvised scenes add to the overall game, but they're not the thing that stand out. Stand out are the things, the effort and about ahead of time and adding scripters. And
I can agree with that, but I think that some of the characters that were there might say that there were other moments that stood out to them because they had more social political focused characters. So I don't know. I think that's a little either way. So, okay, I'm going to have to think now because I'm going to break this game down that you ran. Or you're going to break it down, but I'm going to ask if I get to remember which. So, the game of yours that I'm picking is kind of almost unfair. It's going to be Bluebeard. Well, when I think of the games that you have ran that are like, in my mind, really stick out, that's the first one that comes to mind right away. And I realized that game you can't necessarily plan out because you sit down and the players fill out questionnaires about parts of their bride and what did they give to Bluebeard and what did Bluebeard give to you, all this stuff, right? And then on your end, you're supposed to incorporate all this stuff, right?
Right.
And so
supposed to pick it up and hand you back and eat.
Right. So I will admit, and I've done this myself with some Apocalypse World games where I have nothing planned, where it's you get these answers to these things, and then they're sitting in front of you, and then you're looking at them, and then you're trying to sort of draw connections and put them together, which is some level of planning, right? Because there's this moment of delay that's happening while everybody's filling out their characters, and you have your answers, and you're putting things together, and there's table chatter, and you're doing that mad scramble of like, oh my God, I have to run a game now, right?
Right.
So the one that I'm thinking of, which is the most impactful game that for me was when we played with, is it me? Did Holly Taffy and Carrie play that? Who was it that played it?
They or the first one, the first four,
it wasn't the one.
And Carrie.
I didn't Lee that one. I did not play it because we already had 5. And that was the one where I realized the crone character was like, I think it was. That's what I'm thinking of. So.
Anyways, you'll have to remind me of what you remember because they all together.
That's what I'm trying to go through in my head.
I don't remember which ones.
It's a series of rooms, right? And I'm not even sure which rooms that I may be picking rooms from 2 different games. So maybe we should just talk about this game conceptually, right? Instead of individual. So for those of you that don't know, aren't familiar with Bluebeard or haven't played it, you are aspects of the personality of a woman who is getting married to Bluebeard. Bluebeard and he gives you keys to the house and says, don't go into this one room. And I have to leave, right? And he sort of leaves the marriage unconsummated. And then so you spend your time going through the house, and there are like the ghosts of the former wives essentially in the house.
There's lots of words about him, not so great guy.
And then as you play, it's your job to decide whether or not each room essentially is a moment of his loyalty or his disloyalty, right? That's really kind of honing it down. There's more to it than that, but that's essentially the essence of the game, right? So each I don't want to say each scene, but there's like you go into a room and then you experience them, right? Now the rooms are supposed to be, correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't actually ran it, but like the rooms are supposed to come from the answers to the questions off of the playbooks, right? In some way, or reflect the answers or themes, right? Is that right?
Yeah, you're supposed to sort of. So at the beginning, everybody talks about like the gifts that they give to Beard for the wedding, or the gifts they receive from him, what token of love, that sort of thing. And there's also just physical descriptors about the character and hair. Do your lips? Do they say them? And then there's also bad sort of questions, like how do people, keep your mouth from moving? Basically, like, what do people say to shut you up? What do people say they don't like about your appearance? Pull off those things to ask insecure characters, reflect back horror. But then there's also general archetypes of the character. So like they're the virgin, the femme fatale, the mother, the witch, crone. If they change it,
it's witch, but I feel like it would be better if it was crone. So we go with crone.
And then, so there are different aspects of horror that you having with motherhood, sexual desire,
vulnerability, weakness.
Right? Yeah. So then some of those tend to fit, or certain aspects of the feminine personality more equipped to handle some of those than others. So there's a certain amount of picking things that bad for whichever aspect of bride happened. Plus, you also have them describe the key. So then you're supposed to sort of pull some of the physical attributes of how they look, kind of based in that.
Okay, so
to roughly summarize.
Right. So the way it starts off is that one person is in control of the actual physical bride. So you're like the voices inside the bride's head, right? But one person has the ring, and one ring to them all, and they're in control of essentially the body. But it's a discussion among everybody. But they are the one that ultimately decides what the bride does. Right. So when it starts, you choose a key. Whoever has the ring, and then the I can't remember what the name is. Storyteller, game master, MC, whatever it is, says describe the key to me, right? And then they describe whatever the key looks. Right. And then, okay, so from the first time you ran this game to the last time I'm willing to concede the fact that you can't really plan out a game of this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm already kind of setting this up on my side of the fence already. But what I'm willing to concede is when really where I'm really pushing is what I think Bluebeard's Bride really gets at the essence of. So when you're running these games, and so I described the key to you, right? And you're drawing on that, and you begin to lay out what this room looks like to me, sort of like reflecting a reaction or a response to the key that I've described, right?
Right.
So from the first time to the last time you ran it, are you just drawing on horror tropes and things that you've seen and then sort of taken in from other horror movies and stories and sort of like mashing them together along with what I've given you? Because there's no really way to, do you know what I'm saying? Like, where does it come from, I guess?
Mostly. But can you give me an example of a room that you remember, and I will do my best to try and tell you where that came from?
The bath, like literally bathroom, like bathtub. So there was it wasn't like, there may have been an actual, like, the time period that I was assuming the game was in would have been like chamber pots and stuff, but there was like a big sunken tub in the floor. There was a nice like princess chairs, what I'm going to call it, but like the really thin with the curly doodads at the bottom, with an ornate mirror and makeup stand that, to do makeup at with a brush. And there were moments of, there was something in the water. I think we were in the bathtub. We got in the bathtub to get cleaned up because the previous room we had gotten muddy or something. Is that right?
Yeah, there's actually two different rooms that I think describing, because there was two different games. One was a vanity, and we're a mess in your hair, and then to comb out your hair, pull it free, and the other one was a bath. Two separate ends.
This is where it's strange, because I realize as now I try to describe that game, each game is very close together, and so
but you remember the bath is what you're kind of focusing on.
Well, I remember three different things specifically: the bathtub, the vanity, and the comb, and then the child that wouldn't stop crying in the nursery.
Oh yeah.
And so those are the three that stood out in my mind, and I believe two of those three happened in that game, because the nursery one happened in that game, and the bathtub one, I think, happened in that game. And so
the bathtub, actually, the idea of the bathtub itself, the descriptors I pulled were, I was trying to describe a large bathtub like a Harry Potter with all the bubbles and the different. Right. Because it's supposed to be kind of enticing at first. Like, you want to get into the bath, and it smells lovely, and there's all these different taps for different bubbles. And then I remember like Myrtle being in the tub in that. And so a couple of things that I find creepy. First of all, just water in general, and the way that hair looks in the water just weirds me out. Like Samara in the ring, and it's just like it's floating. And so I try and incorporate some water in a while, because that weirds me out personally.
Right.
And then, just from horror movies, like, first of all, the juxtaposition of something looks so nice and inviting, and the smells and everything, like everything about a bubble bath is just lovely, right? It's warm, it's soothing. And to turn that on its head with the idea that you can't see what is happening underneath those bubbles.
Right.
So the contrast is cool. And then just that. And so in this particular one, I sort of borrowed on the Jap inspiration with something winding up your leg and heading towards your nether regions. Right. You could not tell what it is. It felt very tentacly.
Right.
So that started. I can't remember. Do you see something?
There was a scalding moment of the water as well, because we were trying to clean ourselves, like wash ourselves off. But then,
and I think at first there was a servant that was helping you,
and they scrubbed too hard.
And then she kind of left, yelled at her, and it started happening. Right. At first, it's sort of like you see this other bride that might be below the water and grabbing. It's terrible, but all exciting.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of supposed to touch on yourself proper for your husband,
right.
In feminine cleanliness, unsullied, and that sort of enticing, scary. I don't know, hit or not.
No, I think so.
Aiming for,
but like so.
So I guess not really planned at all. Somebody just described the key, and I thought, well, bath, that sounds like a... Plus, I think you guys were on to get clean at that point. Like, your dress had been ripped or dirty.
I believe we were looking for something that might look like a bathroom key or water. Yeah. Okay. So I'm writing something down because I want to come back to it. So then the next one was that really stands out to me was a nursery in which there was a baby, a child, like an infant that we had to nurse or something, and it wouldn't. We first got there and it was just upset, and we were trying to soothe it, and then there's this discussion amongst us, and clearly there's a mother, right? So it's like, duh, who takes care of this, right? You know, and so, but it became apparent that the baby wasn't necessarily an actual baby. It was more of like a horror of the house, essentially. Right. And it was like trying to, I think there was a moment where we realized the
child.
Yeah. But there was a moment I thought where, I can't remember what it was, one of the characters where they looked down and saw the physical change of their body from motherhood, from going through and carrying a baby and having a baby and all that kind of stuff. So there was, you know, I don't know what you want to call that, but the change of self that happens, you know, because it's a huge thing to go through, obviously, right? And then there was the moment of horror of no matter what we did all the right things you're supposed to do, and we still couldn't soothe the baby, and it was unhappy and angry and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then we called for help, I believe, from servants. So then someone came, and I remember there being this ugly choice of whether we left the child behind with the servant or, you know, we continued to try and mother the child. And there was this...
Well, and that's an option person. Like, okay, to be able to leave, then you have to satisfy what horror inside this was demanding of you. And this horror companionship, it wants a mother. And so
and we sacrificed basically a wet nurse to the horror for us to be able to leave, which in describing it doesn't seem like a big deal, but in the moment it was a very intense scene and it was well put together. And I believe there's a debate for whether or not we should, you know, like the baby should be killed or something. There was a lot that happened in that. And so I guess like how much of that, you know? So
I try to, because there's 5 aspects of the personality, right? Mm-hmm. So I try to incorporate something that's very mother specific horror in everything. And so, you know, things like deliveries, miscarriages, abortions, those are cleansed, but, you know, something else, nursing.
Yeah, kind of loss of self.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's an act that's very sort of compassionate with a child that's special, you know? Right. And I actually was kind of remembering American Horror Story. And she has the child just and he the surgeon stitches it back together after it dies or whatever, and it's an abomination. It breastfeeds, it bites her and bleeding.
Right.
That's really good.
Right.
So them just trying. Sometimes the motherly stuff is more difficult to come up with than some of the, you know, just plain hold you down and scare you kind of stuff is easy to imagine. But some of the other things are a little harder. Maybe you want to go there, but but I find that those are usually the ones that are the most stomach turning and the most difficult for people because you're really not supposed to do bad stuff to
I would
infants.
Say effective is what I would go with.
They're very, very effective.
So I think, so how do I want to ask? I think no matter what question I ask you or what scene that we had, right, is largely because of the way that game is structured. What?
Oh, I'm sorry. What? So you're kind of like supposed to be tying these back to like loyalty versus disloyalty, faithful. So this abomination child had shocking hair, child of Bluebeard, and sort of left to the players to decide, okay, is this an abomination because thing, or does something, you know, that this wife did wrong that caused this child to be, you know, so well, no. I just wanted to mention that because I didn't, but there's also that to mind too. Like ultimately their decision back to Bluebeard as well.
Okay. So let me ask, before I ask what I was going to ask you then, I guess it's important in my mind to ask, when you're running Bluebeard and you're describing the room, are you trying to steer them towards loyalty or disloyalty? Because I suppose that might be the best indication of planning. Do you know what I'm saying? Because
I don't really think that you should be, but it's difficult for me because more like I'm trying to think of something that is scary and or disheartening and or like nauseating.
Right.
And then I try and think, all right, well, how could that relate to Bluebeard?
Right.
And then, I mean, the story, like we all know bad guy, like everybody knows that going out the gate. So then I sort of spend more time thinking about, okay, well, what can I add in here that doesn't make it abundantly obvious that he's a horrible
well, and I will say, even the moments where we chose loyalty, it seemed like
it was less like do anything wrong and more like wife's fault.
Yeah, it was more like a justification, right? Because the context and time period of when it is,
which
what
is
was
horrible
expected.
in and of itself.
No, I don't disagree. But like, it was kind of like, well, we're putting it in the context of this fairy tale, and the world and the time period, and this is what's expected. Right. These are the duties of
this is what a good woman does.
Wife. Yes.
She wasn't being a good woman.
Right. And that's part of what that fairy tale plays on too. So I feel like you're trying to lean into it. So I don't think there's anything wrong necessarily, just provided the table's okay with it. That's sort of the premise of the game, right? So the reason I ask about the loyalty or disloyalty thing, if you're planning towards that, because given the conceit of the game and the way it's structured, you can't necessarily plan those games, right? Now you could say, ooh, I've got a cool idea for a room because you know Bluebeard is your jam. That's the game I like to run. May end up running it the next year or whatever. Ooh, I see something in a movie. That looks really cool. That'll be a great moment for a Bluebeard game, right? You know? So
now, when I run more of run a continuation, if I can remember it, I try to incorporate the previous bride into the new game in some way.
Right. Which I think is a really fun, cool way to do. Well, and then it's also kind of fun for even, this is something that I do in my games, is that I don't think there's anything wrong with putting things in the game just for you as the game master, because you put in things in the game for all the players, right? So even if they don't get it, I had this moment, it was cool. I remember that game, it's a callback, whatever, you know, and if someone gets it, great. And if someone doesn't, great.
Right.
And almost even better than that is if someone I feel like is at a table and they're like, a minute, but they're not sure that it is, but they're also not sure that it's not. And they spend that moment in wonder, being like, is that intentional? I don't know. You know, I think those are fun moments. So given the conceit that it's kind of a loaded question because of the way the game is structured, right? But I do think that I think that it hinges kind of on that. One of the ways you could say it was planned hinges on whether or not you're steering the room towards loyalty or do you know what I'm saying? Does it make sense?
Yeah. And I think I've gotten a little better at it more I've run it, because I've tried. I think the first game we played, it was pretty much all disloyalty, and the game went pretty quick. Trying to be a little more open-ended with my interpretation of things.
Well, I'll be honest, because I'm a selfish gamer a little bit, but when there have been moments where I get to choose the token, if it doesn't break the continuity of the story and what the room is going for, I will look at that thing and be like, well, I can probably get one more room out of this game if I can make it be over here. Now, I'm not going to, try and make something that doesn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's a way to make it make sense, I might be more inclined to do that so I can get one more room or whatever, But yeah, so that's just me being a selfish gamer, though. So.
I have used, before we ran one of the games, I looked at room at some aspects of I'm the one I take.
Well, see, it's kind of choosing Bluebeard almost isn't fair, but like Bluebeard is my ideal version of running games. So like you've internalized all these horror stories and all these horror scenes and movies and all this stuff from life and books and blah, 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 all this stuff, right? And games. And so you sit down without necessarily a plan other than the fact that we're going to play the story of Bluebeard, right? Which is where I like to have the framing of my session around, right? So if you frame this Bluebeard game around the fact that you're getting married and we're going to play through the story of Bluebeard, right? Everything else is up in the air. But we're all sort of like riffing on each other and offering inspiration and moments and all this kind of stuff. And then at the same time, at the head of the table is you pulling things together to build these scenes and put them together and weave things together to where it's not, like there might be elements that come out of like Rosemary's Baby, right? But there's no scene that is Rosemary's Baby. You've sort of like taken them and sort of woven the threads together to make it into something new. And that's where I'm trying to get to. I guess that's what I'm trying to describe. Like it's planned because you've seen all these stories and you know all these moments, but it's not because you're just sort of together in the moment because you understand stories and you have loads of source material and inspiration. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what I'm really trying to get to. I think I went a very circuitous way to get to that point, but that's what I'm trying to put my finger down on.
Game. I mean, like Bluebeard's Bride is exhausting.
No, I can imagine.
Like we get to the end of the session and I'm like, well, I got nothing left.
I think if it was anything other than a horror game.
Well, it's not just that. It's just so many things to juggle, right? Like I'm trying to be like serious and scary, but create this choice. There has to be an object for you to hold on to.
I don't think it has anything to do with
pulling off things from your character sheet.
Hang on. I don't think it has anything to do with what you're juggling. I think it has to do with the emotional intensity. Because I could guarantee you, if we set up a similar game that was like not Bluebeard's Bride, but it was like, I don't know, the princess's daughter that you had to go rescue in the castle, and I ask you, you're the warrior, right? And we can go through all these archetypes and make you into archetypes and play this game. I think you would just do that and it would be no problem. I think it really comes down to why it's exhausting exhausting and takes a toll is because the intensity of it, it's horror. It's a different kind of horror than most people experience. It's very personal. It's a very intimate game because everybody is paying attention the entire time. Like it adds, there's all these things that are built into the game that make it intense. And I think a lot of it is because horror and feminine horror and all that comes along with that. And I think that's what makes it exhausting, like in a good way. But like, that's what does it, not, I think it's just an emotionally intense thing. And we've all been through those intense moments where you're like, oh, wow,
I do sometimes, if the particular session you picked, I really had not intended on running Beard at all that day. So that's unique because the sessions that I have more advanced notice for, I do time thinking about these are things that would be scary, and should the opportunity come up, then I'll incorporate, and maybe I'll think of 6 things and I may only use 2 of them. So
I don't, this isn't a shot at you. I think the games will be fine whether you are, provided you're not in a bad headspace to do it or whatever, right? But whether you're running Bluebeard today, well, no, but you know what I'm saying, you know what I mean? Not in the mood to run that game or whatever, right? But I don't think that on your end of things, I don't think that there is a difference in the quality of the game that comes out of you, provided you have time to plan and say, I'm running Bluebeard in a week, a month, whatever it is, versus, hey, I guess I could run Bluebeard today. I think what really brings that game out is the people at the table, because the amount of planning or lack of planning that goes into that game, I don't think it matters for you. I think you've already internalized so much material that it doesn't matter. Do you know what I'm saying? There might be some cool moments you're like, oh, I haven't thought of that before, but I don't think that's going to make or break the game. It might make that moment really cool, but that's not going to be like, oh, the whole game hinged on this one. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that's not the way the game is structured. But
so you know, the sessions that I ran are good.
I think that, okay, so the first time you ran it will stand out because it was the first time that we experienced that game, right? That way at our table. So that one will always stand out, I feel like. But I think that the most recent one that we had all 5 parts of the personalities at the table, which I think creates an interesting atmosphere, right?
Yeah.
And the people that we had at the table, it was it was good chemistry. It was the right moment for everybody at the table. There were intense moments and scenes. We were all leaning into it. And I think that's what brought it out. I think it's sort of like, I don't know a good analogy to use, but that's when the game really comes and shines, right? I think that you're entirely capable of running a good game of it no matter what, almost, right? But what makes that take the next step up is having people to bounce your ideas off of, playing, instead of playing like racquetball by yourself, you're playing tennis. Does it make sense? You know what I mean? Like the wall is always going to win. You know what I'm saying? But does it make sense? So yeah. Well, I don't know. That's what sticks out the most in my head for me for games that you've ran. I could have done Tales of the Loop.
It's almost land.
True. That's why when I said it. But when I think of intense games that we play that you run, that's the one that always comes up for me. But I know it's partly because I like that game so much, and also because there's also,
I'm a horde. Yeah. So those are my favorite kinds.
There's nothing like it. There's just
media,
nothing.
Book, all of it. So I don't know that.
Right.
I'm sure that has to be helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, it's almost not fair. But I was surprised. I thought, I don't know. Well, we were talking about different games, and I thought your go-to would be Degenesis. I thought your go-to one would have been fresh in your mind would have been The King in Yellow. So because that one was way more improvised. I built a world, but then it was like, I don't even know how we're going to get you from point A to point B. So
I'm not sure what.
Yeah, me either. Well, I think the big takeaway from all of this is that maybe early on in your gaming career, planning takes a more important role, right? But if you're proactive about trying to get better at running games, right? And in my mind, that's not just reading games and auditing the sessions you run. It's also what kind of things are you taking in story-wise, right? And what are you internalizing? And are you paying attention to when you watch a movie or watch a television series or whatever it is, to the beats that are happening and how they're trying to manipulate your emotions with story, right? And then internalizing those things so that whether you're consciously using them or not, you are, right? And that's where I was trying to get to, is to say that you've already planned this game, you just don't realize. That's where I'm trying to get to, is that you've internalized so much story and so much, the beats of the way things go, is that you've already planned this game, you just don't realize it, right? It's like you're a master chef. The master chef doesn't measure out the garlic, he just goes, boop, there's the garlic, there's the salt, there's the whatever, right? They just know what.
Feel it.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? they're not being like 2 tablespoons. It's more, it's feel, and that's where I'm trying to get to. I guess that's a better analogy between the jam band and cooking or whatever is that you know the ingredients, right? And you know the flavors. You just have to mix them at the right moments, right? Right on. So I'm not sure where I'm going to cut this one in the beginning of this episode because obviously we started recording this kind of just talking and then was like, hey, I think, well, we're just going to keep going.
I forgot we did intro.
That's all. Well, we were just talking and I was like, okay, so we'll probably record an intro here. So, all right. So I think we will wrap that one up here. Hopefully you guys got something this, well, I was doing good till right now. I think the wheels fell off this motherfucker.
Too much planning.
There you go. See, lesson learned. All right. Well, hopefully you all got something out of this. I suppose it just is another message for you to go out there and consume stories and books and media and movies and series and stuff that you enjoy and might be a little far away from what your normal tastes are, because it's cool to try and find sources of inspiration in kind of odd places and like genre mash things up in weird ways, because it can create some cool moments or whatever, right? So yeah, hopefully this is useful to you guys. If not, we had a great time geeking out about some games we played and sort of seeing our creative process and I guess doing a little audit on ourselves for how we put games together. As you know, remember the Gonna Geek Network, so you can head over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com and check out all the awesome content over there. And if you like what we do here at Just More Fix, you can head over to patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix and support us over there and get access to all of our raw audio feeds and pre-shows, as well as our zine print or PDF format, depending on what level you support at, and join the awesome ranks of our Patreon supporters like Alistair H., Paul Hubbard, Hector Treelane, Tiziano Furlano, Timothy Barra, Simon McNair, Alan White, and the OG Todd Olson. I think that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you all next week. So now I have to do the intro, and I think I'm going to have to do some kind of a little bit of a lead-in because I don't know where I will cut it to start the episode. You know what I'm saying? So what are we calling this thing? Story. That works. How about knowing the rhythm? Actually, that's what I wrote down. Well, okay.
So to come,
yeah,
that is also kind of plot point are all laid out for you.
What do you mean?
Okay, so here's the engagement. Now here's the keys. Now you're going to go through this room, this room, this room, this room. Then you're going to get to the end. Now you're going to make a decision. Now we're going to talk about what happens because of the decision.
But you didn't plan that. The game designer did.
The plot points are inherent in the game.
Fair enough.
Like we all know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're just see how the end looked before we got to.
It's an interesting mashup of the two things, though, because it is plotted out, but the part you're playing, though, is that rhythm story improving. But yeah, you're right. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at Incompetech.com. You can support us at Patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at Just One More Fix.